What's up everybody, welcome to my channel. Today I'm gonna be working on this 87 Toyota Supra. Alright guys, so a few years ago I did a 2J swap on this Supra. I pretty much left it all stock, but just recently I did the head on it. I added a Tomei head gasket with ARP head bolts. Today I'm gonna be redoing the harness because I'm gonna go single turbo with bigger injectors. I'm gonna put a standalone and also a bigger intake manifold with a 90mm throttle body. So I'm gonna start working on the harness first, and then once I finish the harness, I'm gonna move on to install the single turbo. Okay, so I'm gonna start by working on the harness. I'm gonna remove it, and honestly, I'm just gonna redo it because since I'm gonna put a standalone, I'd rather just do it outside of the car and then work my way. And I have to remove this piece of the intake because I'm gonna be installing the new intake, and we'll see how it goes. Okay, so the turbo housing wouldn't clear the manifold. It was hidden right here and it wouldn't sit all the way. So I had to weld the spacer. Now I'm gonna check to see if it clears and it doesn't heat anymore. Okay, so I bolted the turbo on, and as you guys can see, it clears, it doesn't heat anymore. So that's about the angle I need, so that should be fine. Okay, so I finished welding the spacer. The turbo clears now. Now I'm gonna install the wastegate. I know that's not gonna clear, so I have to cut it and re-weld it. So first I'm gonna install this and see how much I have to cut off that one and weld it back on. Okay, so the manifold is in. I had to raise the motor a little bit. I had to unbolt the motor mounts and raise the motor. As you can see, I have it on the jack, because to get to this bottom nut right here, there's not enough room, and honestly you have to play with the manifold, and it was hidden on the chassis, so I had to raise the motor, but it's already bolted down, and I also bolted down the wastegate. I had to modify this coolant pipe right here because it usually wraps around the motor for the oil cooler, but I'm not gonna be using the oil cooler anymore. That's why I cut it off. I'm gonna be using air oil cooler, so I'm not gonna be using that no more. And I also put the fitting already for the oil return. I just gotta put the thermostat on. And also I had to modify the dump tube. So here it is. I had to cut it and weld it back because it was hidden on the chassis, but that's done. So once I bring the motor down, or I'm gonna try to install the dump tube. Once I do that, I'm gonna bring the motor down and I'm gonna start working on the turbo and the intercooler piping, because I'm not gonna be able to use these anymore. I gotta change it a little bit so I'm able to connect it to the throttle body, since I'm gonna be using a bigger throttle body. It's not gonna sit in the same spot anymore as the stock one, so I gotta reroute that. And once I finish with that, I should be able to start working on the harness. Okay, so the manifold is completely bolted on, the wastegate and the dump tube. Now I'm working on the turbo. So I'm gonna put a new pipe for the intercooler. I'm gonna put a 90-degree right here, so a 90 is gonna work perfectly. And then I might weld an additional pipe to the turbo, because it's gonna sit so close to the chassis, and I'm not gonna have enough room to maneuver the coupling. So I'm just gonna weld an extra piece of pipe and I'm gonna be using, like I said, I'm gonna be using this 45, and I'm gonna be welding the blow off. I'm gonna show you what it had before. It's somewhere over here. Let me see, give me 1 second. Oh, it's right here. So this is what I was using before. So I was using this blow off, but the position, see, like the position and the angle is not gonna work anymore. It's gonna hit right here. So I'm gonna leave this one the way it is. I'm not gonna cut it off and try to weld it on that pipe. I'm just gonna get another blow off, and I'm gonna modify this pipe, because honestly, if I cut this one, I mean, I could cut it and reuse the blow off, but I could use this piece for another car later on. So I'm gonna keep it, and I'm gonna buy another blow off. They're not that expensive, so they're only replicas. So I'm gonna get another blow off, and I'm gonna weld it on this pipe. But before I do that, I'm gonna get this pipe ready. I'm gonna make sure the turbo sits, it fits properly, it clears, and like I said, weld an extension and cut this one to the right size and just use a 45. Try to keep it simple. Okay guys, so I'm making the return line for the turbo. I like to use grease. I just put grease on the fitting. That way when I put the fitting on the hose, it's able to slide in no problem. So I'm gonna finish doing the hose, and I'm gonna install it right now. Okay, so I'm done with the return line. I already set up the turbo for the angles I'm gonna need. I'm gonna install it right now, and then I'm gonna install the downpipe. Then I'm gonna start working on the intercooler piping. I gotta modify it a little bit. I think I know what I'm gonna do with it. I already started working on it, as a matter of fact. So I'm gonna see if I'm only gonna try to use a 45 and see if it works. But for now, I'm gonna install the turbo. Okay, I just bolted down the turbo. I already connected the drain. So I'm gonna do the downpipe next. That one, all I gotta do is bolt it on. I already figured out the piping on this side. I'm gonna use a 45. So I'm gonna use the same 45. I'm gonna make it look a little bit better. I'm missing a black coupler, so I'm gonna get a black coupler, and then I'm gonna bolt it on. But pretty much, it should fit no problem. So it's gonna go in no problem. The AC lines, I'm gonna leave them there because I want to keep the AC. So I might do some brackets to hold them together, but for now I'm just gonna leave them the way they are. And the intake, I already did an intake. It's not a big deal. I just bought a filter, and I got a piping with the downpipe, so it fit no problem. It's gonna clear everything. I already checked. Okay, so I got more parts that I needed, like the feed line. I have the feed line already. Couple of fittings. I'm not gonna be using these anymore, but in case I need them, I have them. And these hoses right here. These hoses, they go between the valve covers. These ones right here. So I was using the wrong hose, and the other one is the original, but it's already hard, it's cracked. So I'm gonna be replacing that. So I'm gonna finish this side. All I needed was just the feed line. I'm gonna put it on right now, and that should be it. And on this side, I'm gonna finish cleaning it up, and I can start installing the new stuff. Okay, so I put the intake back on because I needed to check some clearances. The power steering, it didn't want to clear. The inlet, it had this on, and it was hitting on the throttle. And also it was pointing up, so I was gonna have to run the hose on top of the intake around it. And instead I cut a little angle and I welded it on. So now the hose is gonna run underneath. I still don't know if I'm gonna mount the reservoir on front of the radiator, or if I'm gonna put it somewhere over here. I think it's gonna be better in front of the radiator. So for now, I'm gonna remove the intake again. I'm gonna install the oil cooler and put the intake back on, and I'm gonna finish doing this side of the piping. And I also want to fix these wires. I don't want the wires to run to the back of the motor. I'm gonna probably bolt them I'm gonna probably ground them somewhere over here. So I'm gonna remove the intake and start installing the oil cooler. Okay, so I'm gonna be using this oil cooler from Rev 9. It's not the greatest, but it should do the job. So they pretty much include hoses, fittings, and the sandwich for the oil filter. And here's the oil cooler. It's a decent size cooler, so I'm gonna figure out where I'm gonna install it. But for now, I'm gonna install the sandwich for the oil filter and the hoses, and figure out where I'm gonna install the actual cooler. Okay, so I'm gonna install these pieces right here, and figure out where I'm gonna install the cooler on the car. Okay, so I've been working on the oil cooler. I already installed the sandwich. I'm running the hoses, and I'm also working on the brackets right now. So I did these brackets to hold the oil cooler. So there's another bracket right here for the bumper, and I'm welding the little brackets that I made to that bracket from the bumper, and I'm gonna run the lines from the bottom. So I'm just gonna connect them right here and right here, and so this is how it looks. I'm gonna take off the bracket and the cooler right now, so I can finish welding the brackets, and then once I finish, I'm gonna spray them and I'm gonna bolt them back on. Okay, so this is the bracket from the car, and these are the little two brackets that I made. So I'm gonna finish welding them on, and I'm gonna spray them black, then I'm gonna bolt the oil cooler back on. Alright guys, so I finished the power steering. I had to do an angle right here to clear the intake, and then I did another angle right here to go back to the reservoir. I did a little bracket for the reservoir. Now I'm gonna work on the wires over here. So I'm gonna put the fuse box right here to clear the intercooler piping, and these wires, I'm just gonna do another hole right here, and I'm just gonna run them through the bottom. I'm gonna be running them through the bottom. And this hose right here for the booster is gonna go to the bottom of the intake as well. So I'm gonna modify this bracket right here so I can bolt it onto the booster, and then it's just gonna bolt onto the bottom of the intake. Okay, so I'm making the bracket for the fuse box. So I'm just gonna set it right here. Okay, so I finished with the bracket for the fuse box. So that's how the fuse box looks now. Okay guys, so I had to modify the downpipe. Well, it's not the downpipe, it's the exhaust, because I put a downpipe. So this was the one that I had before. So it pretty much went like this. This one is a lot shorter because of the downpipe. I already measured it, I already cut it. So I already welded it. So I should be ready to install the exhaust. And I still need to modify the dipstick. I'm gonna do that right now. And this is for the booster. So this one's gonna go underneath the intake, and that's a fuel pressure regulator. I already installed it. Oh, and this is what I did on the fuse box. I removed all the wires, and I'm gonna run them through the bottom of the car. So I'm gonna run the piping and the wires through the bottom. So that should look a lot cleaner once I'm done with it. And I'm pretty much done. I'm pretty much done with doing all the fabrication. So I'm gonna put some Chevrolet coils, and I'm gonna do the harness. Okay, so I'm done with the exhaust. Now I'm gonna get the coils ready. I'm gonna be using the GM coils. I got this from the junkyard. I'm gonna clean them up. I'm gonna get them ready. I'm gonna be using these boots right here. I have 6 of them. and 6 coils. So I'm gonna clean those up as well, and I'm gonna be installing them on the GM coils. Then I'm gonna throw them on the car. I'm also gonna be replacing these 2 breather hoses. I bought new ones. Should have them somewhere in here. Well, they're somewhere in here, but I got new hoses. Okay, so this is what I've done so far. I already finished this side of the motor. All I gotta do is connect the boost controller. But I already finished the piping and the intake. I already put the sensor. I'm just gonna leave the sensor right there. Now on this side, I already finished the power steering, and I also did a bracket for the fuse box. So I'm gonna leave the fuse box right here so it can clear the piping. The wires, I'm gonna run them through the bottom. As you can see, I did a hole. I put an insulation, that way I don't damage the piping or the wiring. And over here, I already ran the fuel lines. I put another relay for the starter. It's a 40 amp relay, so it should be good enough to provide juice to the solenoid, so it can crank the motor. So now all I have to do is the wiring. That's what I'm gonna do right now. I'm gonna do the wiring. The intake is also ready. Here's the intake. I already put the sensors and the fittings for the vacuum. I already did that. This piping is gonna connect to the throttle body, and this is the fuel rail. I already put the injectors. I just gotta do something real quick to the fuel rail, and I'm gonna bolt it on, and that should be it. So I'm gonna do the harness right now. I'm gonna try to finish it. And I'm gonna put the harness, I'm gonna throw it on the car. Once I'm done, I'm gonna put the intake on, connect all the fuel hoses, and hopefully it starts no problem. Starts right up, no problem. But we'll see what happens. Okay, so here's where the fun begins. So I'm gonna be using this standalone. It's a Series 2, AEM Series 2. I'm not gonna use those plugs. I'm gonna be using these ones right here. I got new plugs because I want to play it safe. So I'm gonna be putting new plugs. This harness, I'm just gonna remove some of the wires that I need, and I'm gonna probably use it for a different car. I have another 2J going on, and I'm gonna use the original computer. The original turbo computer. So this harness, I'm just gonna remove whatever I need and try to save it for another car. I'm gonna be using this harness right here. So pretty much I'm gonna be using the connectors. I believe this is for the master flow, so I don't need this one, but this is for the igniter. Okay, I'm gonna be using most of the connectors, but not all of them. So this is like a spare harness. It's not complete. So I just need some connectors so I can do my own harness for the standalone. It's not a big deal to do a harness. The only thing is that it's time consuming and you gotta be careful not to mix up the wires, but it's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Not a big deal. Anybody could do it, but you gotta pay attention to what you're doing, and you gotta have patience. That's all it is to it. Patience, and you gotta pay attention. There's a lot of diagrams online. There's a lot of diagrams on everywhere pretty much, mostly online. And I mean, anybody could do a harness nowadays. Some people decide not to do it because they don't know anything about electrical, but in reality, it's not a big deal. I've seen people that have no experience. They do it and they get the cars running. So I'm not gonna show you guys step by step of what I'm doing. I'm just gonna show you some of the things that I'm doing on the harness and how I'm gonna do it. But I don't wanna be recording the whole process because it's gonna be a long video if I do. And honestly, I'm trying to make the video as short as possible. Okay, so this is what I'm gonna do for the harness. Pretty much, I'm just gonna keep the connectors. Pretty much, I'm just gonna keep the connectors that I need. For example, I need to keep the one for the BBTI, for the knock sensors, for the cam. I'm gonna keep the ones for the AC and the power steering. What else I have? I need to keep the one for the crank. It's somewhere over here. Here's the one for the crank. So I'm gonna keep that one. And also I'm gonna use GM coils. Those connectors, I have them, so I'm gonna be using those. And I gotta run the wires for the gauges, and also I gotta connect the fuse box, and I run those wires through the bottom. So those are the only ones I'm gonna be keeping. I might keep some of the ones that go to the brakes, and then there's another one for the heater. So I'm gonna try to keep those, but the rest of the wires I'm just gonna get rid of. I'm not gonna use. What else? Like, I'm not gonna be using the oxygen sensor anymore, because I'm gonna be using the air fuel ratio sensor. So yeah, so I don't really need a lot of wires. I just gotta power up the coils, the sensors, and the injectors, and that's pretty much it. And run the grounds to the computer, and yeah, make it simple. Okay, so I had to do a couple of notes. To figure out the wires and the pins I'm gonna be using. Luckily, this guy kind of labeled. See, he put like dots to all the pins he was using, and on some of them he put some notes. So it made it a little bit easier for me. I already have the connectors I'm gonna be using for the knock sensor, the throttle body, the cam sensor. So I'm gonna put them on the car right now. I'm gonna see how long I need them, and I'm gonna remove some on this harness. This is the other harness that I removed the connectors from. So this harness, I gotta remove a couple of connectors, like this one, and this one right here. It goes to the chassis of the car. So I'm gonna remove those connectors, and I'm gonna put them together with those, and then I'm gonna connect them to the computer, and hopefully it starts. I've never used this computer. It's for the Hondas. I know that you could modify them for the 2Js, but I didn't know anything about it. I didn't think it was gonna be a big deal. It's not, but it's not a big deal because, first of all, somebody already opened it up and modified it for the 2J, and secondly, this guy made some notes and he labeled it, pretty much everything. So it's gonna make it easier for me. It's not a big deal. It's pretty straightforward, but when you do something for the first time, it could get complicated. Okay, so this is what I've done so far. I already connected some of the wires, actually some of the connectors that I'm gonna be using. So these ones are for the coils, and the knock sensors. This is for the gauge. This is one is gonna be for the crank. The cam is over here, and there's the oxygen sensor. So pretty much I already run most of the wires. This is for the throttle body right here. So I already kind of labeled everything I'm gonna need. Here's the harness. So this was the original harness I had on the car. I removed these wires. They're from the body of the car. I'm gonna be using a couple of connectors. This is for the AC. I'm gonna put the AC later on. This is for the alternator. So I'm gonna start connecting the wires to the standalone. I'm gonna start connecting these ones for the main relay, the battery, the switch 12 volts, and these ones over here. These ones over here, I already labeled all of them. They're all labeled already, and they're extended as well, so they're gonna be long enough to go inside the car. So like I said, I'm gonna start connecting them to the standalone, and I'm gonna see if it starts. So this is the progress so far. I have a bunch of wires. I have a bunch of wires everywhere. There's a bunch of wires everywhere, but the good news is that I already labeled all of them. So all I have to do is run them to the computer and connect them, and I'm done. So that's what I'm gonna do right now. I'm gonna remove the intake again. I'm gonna insulate all the wires, put them together, connect them, and that's it. Okay, so I've done most of the work already. I already bolted down the intake. This is how the fuse box looks after running the wires underneath. So I just gotta run this wire underneath the intake, and then I gotta put insulation on those and connect them to the computer. But I'm pretty much finished. I'm gonna finish doing the wiring right now. Connect the computer and see. Hopefully it'll start, no problem. Okay, so I'm almost done with the car. I just gotta put another throttle cable because this one's too short. I already ordered another one. It just got here today. So this is the throttle cable I'm gonna be using. It's a lot longer than this one by a little bit, but a lot longer. I already run the wires. All I gotta do is put insulation. So I'm gonna put insulation on this, on the harness, and I'm pretty much done. It's already been I already connected everything. I already connected the sensor. I already ran the harness inside, and I connected the computer. So I gotta clean all this wiring right now, but I already pretty much connected everything to see if the car's gonna start. So I'm about ready to crank it and start the car. So I'm gonna connect the battery right now and make sure the fuel pump turns on. And I'm gonna crank it and see if it starts. Okay, so I got fuel. I set it to about 45 pounds. Everything's connected. I double checked everything. So I'm gonna crank it and see if it starts. I'm gonna do it from this side because on the driver's side I have a lot of stuff. I have like motors and stuff. So I'm not gonna be able to get to the drivers, and I just wanna see if it starts so I can finish this. So let's crank it and see if it starts. There it is. Okay, so I guess everything's connected properly because the car starts. So I'm gonna finish the harness, I'm gonna put that throttle cable, and then I'm gonna take it outside and drive it. Before I put the throttle cable and put insulation on the harness, I want to rev it up, see how it sounds. Alright guys, so it seems like it's running fine. It revs no problem. Okay, so now I'm gonna turn it off and finish off the harness. Okay, so here's what I did to the car. I went single turbo. I put the turbo intake. I put bigger injectors, and I went with the standalone. So that's pretty much I did to it, and I'm gonna drive it right now. See how it pulls. It has a tune. It has a tune with the I think it's similar injector size, and I think it's gonna be running with somewhere around 12-13 pounds of boost. So as soon as I get a chance, I'm gonna take it to get another tune, and I'm gonna see if I can bring those numbers up. I don't know how much it's making, but it's supposed to make anywhere from 400 to 430. But once I take it to the shop and get it tuned, we'll see how much power it's really making. Okay, so this is how it looks. I'm pretty much done with it. The only thing I gotta replace is the clutch master cylinder because it went out, and I'm gonna replace the slave as well. But that's how the fuse box looks with all the wires running through the bottom. I gotta clean up this side of the turbo because we have the AC lines. I'm gonna get some custom made ones later on. I'm gonna clean them up, but I mean overall it looks pretty nice.